Hey everyone, welcome to the Friday edition of Just Parlays with Chris King. I'm Jim Williams. Chris, uh, interesting and exciting night as you went well and deep into the morning waiting for the final game out in the West Coast Conference out there last night.
Yeah, it seemed like those games were never going to end because they just kept on rolling. And fortunately, at least both the teams that we talked about yesterday came up on the right side of the ledger. Loyola Marymount rolled away from Pacific in the second half, and then San Diego put away Pepperdine. Nobody expected the Waves to win, let's face it. We talked about how they had no wins on the road all season.
Mm-hmm.
They hadn't won outside of, Malibu there. And last I checked, the West Coast Conference Tournament was not held in Pepperdine's backyard. So they were going to end up losing. It was just a matter of when it was going to happen. I mean, the Waves had a lead in the second half, couldn't hold it, and San Diego put them away. So they lived to play another day. Unfortunately, it might be the only one.
Whoa, there you go. Incoming. All right, well, Chris deals with the attack of his cat. We'll come back here for just a second to talk about our buddies at BetMGM because they have two promotions they're running with us. Now, BetMGM will give new customers a risk-free bet on their first wager up to $1,000. Only new players are eligible for this bonus, and it must be claimed within 7 days of signing up. Now, once you create that account and make your first deposit, then you place any real money bet between $10 and $1,000, they're going to match it, okay? So that's a pretty cool deal. And remember that you must be 21 years of age to play, and always bet responsibly. So that's the first of two. We'll have another one for you. All the information on both of the MGM promotions are in our show box below. And by all means, click on it and check it out, okay? So, moving on, we are now moving to some basketball, my friend, and we got an interesting one to start things off.
Yeah, a couple teams that nobody really talks about because, let's face it, they're a conference that doesn't necessarily draw a ton of interest in the national media. It's the Big South. High Point everybody knows because Tubby Smith was the coach there until he resigned last month. Now it's his son, Gigi Smith. So it'll be an interesting matchup for High Point. They come in, they're 14 and 17 overall. They were 7 and 9 in the conference in the regular season. They did beat Hampton in the first round of the tournament, 84-77 in overtime. But let's face it, Hampton only won 9 games all season. They're 9 and 19, not going to really impress anyone. Winthrop was a very good team. Like I said, a team you don't really talk about, but 21 and 8, they were 14 and 2 in the conference. The only team that was better than them was Longwood, who went 15 and 1 in the North Division. Because of course you got to split these conferences up into divisions. You can't just have 12 teams play each other.
No.
High Point struggles offensively. They're 207th in scoring offense at 70.1 points a game. They're 148th in field goal percentage, 191st in two-point shooting. They don't shoot a lot from outside, and probably the most damning statistic is the fact that they're in the bottom 10 in the country at the free throw line, 64.3%. Not going to get it done. It kind of makes that 69.2% that we have there for Winthrop look downright impressive, doesn't it? But the Eagles are good offensively. They're 58th in scoring offense. They average 76 points a night. They're 8th in field goal percentage at 48.9%. They're 7th in two-point percentage at 57.5%. They're 50th in threes per game at 8.8. They shoot the ball well from outside, 37.6%. So they can get by without hitting as many free throws as you would like. Facing a team like High Point, nobody's going to be bowled over with what the Pioneers do, or the Panthers, I'm sorry. They're not going to push the tempo. They're not going to shoot the ball well. They're going to hang in because, if they force turnovers, if Winthrop can avoid the turnover bug, they're 321st in the country in that regard, turning it over on 21.1% of their possessions. If they can avoid that, they should be in good shape here. Just looking at the numbers, like we said, even with that win yesterday, High Point 4-12 in their last 16 on a neutral floor. They're 1-4 against the spread in their last 5 on Friday. Went from 6-2 in their last 8 overall, 5-2 in their last 7 after a straight-up win. Now, Jim, the coach at Winthrop, Mark Prosser. Do you know who his father was?
Mark, what was his last name?
Prosser.
No, I don't.
Does the name Skip Prosser ring a bell?
Yeah, it does. Huh.
Former coach at Wake Forest.
Yeah, there's a lot of sons and now coaching in in place of their father, or working their way up the ranks. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting aspect.
I mean, look at Ryan Odom. Formerly of UMBC, now he's out there at Utah State.
Right.
His dad Dave Odom, of course, had a long run down in Tobacco Road. We just talked about J.J. Smith and Tubby Smith.
Right.
So yeah, it's
talk about Rick Pitino's son.
Yep, and John Thompson's son, of course, when he coached Georgetown.
Right.
So yeah, it's interesting to see how things have moved on. I wonder if at some point we'll see one of the Bayheims on the bench.
Well, they're on the bench now, but yeah, replacing their father or coming into the coaching business, it's not an uncommon thing. There's a lot of college and pro sons who are in the coaching business whose fathers were at one point in time either a coordinator or a head coach themselves. So there you go.
And Euler, you're good to see Euler. Hopefully you didn't watch the Arizona Cactus beat the Colorado Avalanche yesterday. It was very disappointing for everyone except for the 3 people that still identify as fans of the Coyotes.
Right. And out in the desert. So there you
go. And if they were those 3 people that are fans, they probably did not go to the Gieler Arena because they'd probably stop being fans if they had to pay $16 for a beer.
That's a good reason to stop. Let's go to the big. The MAC. I almost said the Big Ten. It's a little Big Ten. So
might as well be.
Yeah.
Miami of Ohio. The Red Hawks are going to host Eastern Michigan, everybody's favorite geographically
challenged
geographically challenged directional team from the Great Lakes State. Good old Eastern Michigan, then you got Central Michigan, you got Western Michigan. I'm still waiting for North or South Michigan to show up.
Actually, to your point, Eastern Michigan is just a little bit south of Ann Arbor. So it would be Southern Michigan if there were such a thing as Southern Michigan.
Well, just give it 10 minutes. I'm sure they'll come up with some other campus somewhere and we'll have Southern Michigan soon. They're going to have Northern Michigan, I guess, on Mackinac Island or something.
Right.
But yeah, Eastern Michigan has not been a good basketball team this year. Let's face it, they're 10-20, they're 5-14 in the conference. And they got a lovely 2-13 road record. One of the wins, of course, was over Western Michigan, just to, make things entertaining. Because why not beat another team from your own state that has a different direction than you? Yeah. Their other road win, of course, was over Central Michigan. There you go. Eastern Michigan has not won outside the state of Michigan this season.
Well, there you go.
I just realized that now. Always great to find out those kind of interesting tidbits.
Those nuggets.
I'm sure Lenny would be thrilled to know that Eastern Michigan has not won outside the borders of the state of Michigan.
He's actually a Michigan State fan. So.
Well, then I feel bad for him because
this year is not a good year to be a Michigan State fan.
Yeah, they got rolled last night by Ohio State. Didn't cover, much to the chagrin of people on Twitter. But Miami is 72nd in scoring offense, despite not shooting the ball all that well. Mainly because they shoot a lot of threes. They're 32nd in the country, 9.3 triples a night. They're 113th in 3-point percentage at 35%. And look at that. They're a top 10 team in knocking down free throws. Can you believe that?
That's what you want to see.
8th in the country. Too bad they're still below 500 and won't go anywhere after the MAC tournament next week. But so what? They're still they can hang their hats on knowing that they knock down free throws. Meanwhile, Eastern Michigan, bad offensively. They're 227th in scoring offense. They're 245th field goal percentage at 43%. They shoot shoot under 50% inside the arc. They don't shoot a lot of threes. When they do, they shoot them poorly, as we see, 307 and three-point percentage at 31%. And they don't shoot free throws very well, 236 at 69.8%. If that wasn't bad enough, Eastern Michigan doesn't play defense either. 325th in scoring defense at 76 points a game. Opposing teams shoot 44.8% from the floor, 50% inside the arc, 35.5% from three-point range. That doesn't bode well when you're facing a team like Miami that likes to shoot out there. Eastern Michigan 1-6 against the spread in their last 7 after a straight-up loss. 0-5 against the spread in their last 5 overall, and 0-4 in their last 4 after an ATS loss. I just can't have faith in a team that can't win outside their own borders. Even with Ohio being right nearby, I guess you call it Michigan adjacent.
Mm-hmm.
Michigan has not annexed the state of Ohio yet, so unfortunately for Eastern Michigan, their regular season comes to an end with yet another road defeat. This one coming from the boys from Oxford.
The Oxford in Miami of Ohio. Before we get to the ice, let's talk a little bit about what Chris King's got for you. Now, every day Chris will send you his best parlay tickets to play, usually made up of 2 4-teamers or even greater. Now, not everyone's going to win, we know that, but playing the odds, Chris keeps things very profitable when he does. In the last 2 weeks, Chris has won 6 2-team parlays, 2 14 parlays, 1 16 parlay, 2 18 parlays. Now that means that had you bet $100, you could have won over $30,000 in winnings. Now, to get the picks, now pay attention there, boys and girls. To get the picks, you have to go to our show box and click on the link and fill out the forms, okay? So it's not, you can't text Chris or send him an email. That's not going to get it. You have to go to the website, and all the information is on the website. So go to our show box, check it out, and get picks from Chris sent directly to your email box. But you have to fill it out on the website. All that information is in the show box below, so please be sure to check it out. Now, as we get ready to go to the ice, last night, we had talked earlier in the week about how the Russian players would be received, and Ovechkin for the Capitals and Kuznetsov scored last night, and the fans treated Ovi as if they treat him on any other normal night. Same thing with Kuznetsov. So it seems like those two guys who have said they want no part of the war, they want peace and trying to stay as as low key as possible, were rewarded by the fans last night, and you see it around the league for the most part that the fans have not rebelled against the players in the NHL, all of whom have been very vocal about not wanting to see the war and hoping that quickly there would be peace. So there's that. So tonight we go to the ice, where there's some pretty good matchups here this evening.
Yeah, it's always nice as opposed to some of the doormat games we've seen lately that didn't go the right way. We'll start with the Battle of the Hudson River as the New York Rangers are at home at Madison Square Garden against the New Jersey Devils. Of course, New Jersey has struggled this season. They're 19-30-5. They've gone just 8-17-2 on the road. Meanwhile, the New York Rangers still battling for the top spot in the crowded Metropolitan Division, which, as you know, Jim, has been quite a war of late.
Yeah.
The Rangers coming in 18-5-3 at home on the year. It's supposed to be Nico Dawes, 3-2-0 with a 279 goals against and a 909 save percentage for New Jersey. Not sure why they're going to go with him over. I guess I can see why they'd go over John Gillies. I'm surprised that Mackenzie Blackwood isn't back. He could be injured again, for all I know, because he's been dealing with a lot of injury issues of late. But Igor Shesterkin on the other side for the Rangers, and he's been nothing short of spectacular for the Blue Shirts, 26-6-3, with 198 goals against. Look at that, Jim, a 940 save percentage. What do we're looking at George Hainsworth, Jock Plot type numbers here, going back a long ways. Glenn Hall,
We have some technical difficulties. Do not be concerned. Hang in there, folks. We'll be right with you. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right there. Stand by. Stand by.
Eastern Conference. They're 21-6 in their last. The Rangers 21-6 in their last 27 against Eastern Conference opponents. They're 18-6 in their last 24 at home. The Devils 4-10 in the last 14 meetings in Madison Square Garden, and they've dropped the last 7 meetings overall. You have to look for Shesterkin to slam the door on the Devils and the Rangers to put a few pucks in the net, skate off with a home victory here, and gain some ground in the Metropolitan Division. They enter the night 6 points behind Carolina for the top spot and 3 points behind the Penguins for second place, though they have 2 games in hand on Pittsburgh.
It's going to be an interesting race down the stretch because, this is when they end up starting to play each other a lot. And that's going to be, that whole Metropolitan's going to be a real mess. The same could be said, obviously, for the division with Tampa Bay and Florida and the rest of that group. So there's some...
Well, the interesting thing is, I think that the Rangers have a bunch of money to try and improve at the deadline.
Yeah.
So, I know they've been kicking the tires on some players. It'll be interesting to see what they try to do to bolster things. I know one of the big names that's come up in trade rumors for the Rangers leaving is Alexander Georgiev, who's the backup. But the problem is, if you deal your backup goaltender and Shesterkin struggles or gets injured, then what do you do? Because you just traded away your number 2 guy. I know he's going to be a free agent after the season, but do you deal Georgiev at this point, or do you hang on to him and see what happens?
Look, you cannot, if you've got a backup keeper who you can rely on and you get into the playoffs, you have to have a second guy. You absolutely have to have a second guy that you can count on. And I would be reticent to trade, even though you're going to lose him at the end of the season, right? But, you're not playing for next year, all right? Right at this point, you're playing. If you're the Rangers, you're playing to try to get a cup, and if that means that you keep a guy, and even despite wanting to maybe go out and get somebody else, you're going to hold on to that guy unless somebody really gives you something that makes you a trade offer you cannot refuse, and I just don't see them making that deal. Unless, again, they're bowled over by somebody who hits them with a, hey, here's, I'll give you this guy and a draft choice, and, maybe it's something that they desperately need. But if you look at the Rangers, there's not that much they really need.
That's true. I mean, they could probably use another defenseman because a lot of their blue line guys are younger. But, like you said, they don't have a ton of holes, but they've got almost $22 million in cap space right now to work with. You can take on some money.
You can.
The question is who's out there that you want, that you're willing to give something up to get.
Well, now the point that you just made, okay, which is a very important one. If you got cap money, right, then you don't have to give up as much. You can take somebody else's bad contract or a contract they want to get out from under. So you could take on or rent a player, right? You could say, all right, I can take on this contract. Again, it's a prorated contract. So at the end, and then you worry about it in the off season. So you can take on somebody's big contract, and there's some teams out there that are not in the hunt that we're talking about a defenseman. maybe there's 2 or 3 guys out there that have contracts that teams are like, man, if I could just get rid of this contract, that'd be great. And so they'll take maybe they'll take a 4th or a 5th or a 7th round draft choice if you take the money. So if the Rangers are willing to eat a contract, they may be able to pick somebody up that normally would have cost them, some players, but because of the cap space, the more money you're willing to take on, the less you have to give up.
And that's one of the big things that is going on with the Kraken right now with Mark Giordano. They put the thing on his jersey and everything, but everybody knew that was probably going to be a short-term thing. Now you can deal Giordano, even if they eat half of his salary, because God knows the Kraken have about, $8 zillion under the cap because all the guys are cheap. Right. By the same token, it can improve the return on what they get for Giordano because of the fact that they're going to eat some of the money. So they can, require or pick up some extra picks or, maybe some younger guys, some prospects that they can try and plug in to help help the team going forward. Because obviously, we knew they weren't going anywhere this year. Right. But I mean, come on, the Kraken have according to this, their current cap space is $25 million. So they can eat, even if they eat 50% of the Giordano contract, which is $6.75 million. If they eat $3.5 million, it's not going to make a big dent in their thing.
Back when they used to play baseball in this country, those are the kind of contracts that we, in trades that we saw, where a team would take, like the Yankees could take on, like Giancarlo Stanton, right? The Yankees could make that trade with the Marlins, even though that contract was, prohibitive to the Marlins. It wasn't prohibitive to the Yankees. And so you see that a lot in baseball. Now, they don't have a salary cap. They have a de facto salary cap in baseball with the luxury tax. But, to your point, the Rangers being under the cap by $22 million really gives them some flexibility at the trade deadline that a lot of other teams don't have, because most of the teams that are challenging for Stanley Cup are, they've paid a lot of money out, so that means that cap space is really tight. And so,
look at Tampa Bay or, a team like Vegas, that had to finagle around to get Jack Eichel on the ice by putting Mark Stone on long-term IR.
Right.
Situations like that. I mean, like we've talked about, it's legal cap circumvention. But I mean, their current cap space is $100,000.
Right.
I mean, so like you said, comparatively speaking, you're talking about a massive difference in what these teams can do based on where they are right now.
Well, and the other part to that equation is, you're putting them on the IR, but you're basically delaying cap hell. Okay.
Right.
You may not. It's not going to hurt you this year, but next year, you're already over the cap before you even get started.
Yeah, because I mean, if you look at in the case of Tampa Bay, their current projected cap hit is $89.5 million, which is almost $8 million over the cap is. What do they have on long-term IR now? Oh, Brent Seabrook.
Right.
Why are they? You're still carrying that contract?
Sometimes you can't get rid of them.
They have to pay. Or Seabrook's on the books for 2 more years after this. He's 36.
Right.
$6.875 million. This is one of those things where you just take the guy on so you can stash him and do nothing with it, because let's face it, didn't he retire?
Well, he retired on the ice a couple of times, but no, technically he hasn't. I don't know if did he retire? I don't know if he did.
He won't be officially retiring, but it says he's not officially retiring, but his contract remains on the books. But he hasn't played in 2+ years.
Right, but I mean, at the other part of the equation is right. I mean, it's all guaranteed money, so it's dead money, and dead money is the worst kind, because the guy's not playing, and you can't trade him, and you can't do anything with him. So, I mean, even if he were to retire, that might help the team a little bit in cap relief, but not much. So
yeah, just look at he got traded in July.
Right.
to Tampa Bay for a second-round pick and Tyler Johnson from Chicago. So Tampa Bay took him on so they could stick him on long-term IR and get rid of Johnson's contract.
And they ended up with another contract that was probably as onerous as the one they got rid of.
Yeah, because Johnson's making $5.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that's the one thing about long-term IR is it really, it's a good way to dodge the cap.
Yeah, but not for long. I mean,
right, not for long.
Eventually, you're going to get caught.
Right, but I mean, it helps you right now because once you get to the playoffs, then it doesn't matter because then there is no cap.
Right.
So you're going to see guys like Stone come back. Toronto will probably bring back Jake Wilson. I know Pittsburgh's got Jason Zuckers on long-term IR.
Right.
But all the teams are going to try and use that to try and finagle to get somebody else off the ice in order to help them. But I don't know. I guess I'm just not a fan of being able to dance around the cap. If you got a cap, that's what it's there for. But then again, I guess
you can't do that in the NBA.
Well, I mean, you can with the bird rights and everything else.
Right. But it's not as easy.
True. It's definitely not as easy as, we're just going to stick this guy on IR and wait for the playoffs.
Right. It's like, good.
And John wants to go back to college basketball and talk about Belmont and Morehead State.
Okay, John.
It's going to be an interesting matchup, of course, over there in the Ohio Valley. The winner will probably move on to face, is eventually going to run into Murray State, more than likely. Belmont was second in the Ohio Valley. Morehead State was third. Those three teams combined to go 46-8 in the Ohio Valley Conference. Nobody else had more than 8 wins. If you look at the way those two games went in the regular season, Morehead State won 83-74 at home on January 20th. And then when they went to Belmont on February 10th, it was the epitome of a rock fight where you thought you saw San Diego State, Boise State, because the final was 48-47 in favor of Belmont. But Morehead State covered in that one as a 10-point underdog. Now, of course, playing on a neutral floor, it's going to be a little bit different. But you have to think that, Morehead State, they've got a good group that can match up well with Belmont. I mean, they could have won the second matchup because they were up 10 with 14:25 to go in the game, but only scored 8 points over the last 14 and a half minutes. Not going to get it done by any stretch there. I know Morehead State is getting 4.5 points. I kind of like that just because of the fact that we've talked about how Belmont has struggled down the stretch to blow teams out that they should. You look, and we had that game against Tennessee Tech in early February where they were down 17 or something in the second half, had a rally to win in overtime. They had their issues with Austin Peay. They had their ups and downs with Southeast Missouri State. They didn't really blow out SIU Edwardsville. Then they got obliterated by Murray State last week, 76-43. And like I said, Morehead State won once. They lost the other one by 1, but they were a 10-point underdog. If there's a team that Belmont really didn't want to deal with, it's probably Morehead State.
Right.
I would probably lean towards the points and the Eagles just because Belmont, don't get me wrong, Casey Alexander's got a talented team. Not going to take anything away from them. They got a lot of seniors on that team, a lot of veterans. They've been here, they've done that, got the T-shirt, watched the movie, all that crap. But they don't match up well with Morehead State, and I don't know why. I mean, maybe there's something in the water at Morehead State where, they know how to deal with it. Preston Spradlin has done a great job with the organization there. The one thing that could be a little bit concerning is the fact that, Morehead State, they beat Tennessee Tech up yesterday. So, Belmont has the rest advantage because they didn't have to play a first-round game. I find it ridiculous that you finish third in your conference and you end up having to play in the first round just because they only give it to the top two teams.
Right.
Probably stabilize it more like the WCC, where the top two teams don't play it for the first 3 days.
Right.
But I'm still going to stick with Morehead State.
You bring up the point that is so important in college basketball. And that is sometimes you have a team that, on paper you are 100% better than. But for some reason, matchup-wise, they just drive you nuts. And we had Pete on last week, Pete Metters. And what did Pete say? He said he didn't see Army at all. Because there's not, every time Army and Navy got together, they just matchup-wise, it was a problem. He also said Loyola, which was another team they didn't want to see.
Right, and now he's got. Didn't really want to deal with American because American found the scrap and everything else. Now he got past them. Now they'll face BU, Boston U, in the semifinals. And I asked Pete about that yesterday, and he said I asked him about how they were going to match up with the two big men that they're not big men, but they're the two top scorers for
the Terriers.
The Terriers, and he said, we have to make shots. You can't really rely on trying to stop those guys because
you're not gonna.
Because they're just that good. Mm-hmm. So that's something you got to watch out for too. Mm-hmm. You're not dealing with a pushover by any stretch of the imagination. Nope. And once you get down there into these games where you're down to the semifinals and stuff like that, these teams are so evenly matched. Like Pete told us last week, 3 through 8 or 3 through 9 were all pretty even. And when you looked at how the Patriot League panned out, you had Bucknell. They picked up a win in the first round, and of course they got smashed by Colgate. But was anybody expecting them to beat Colgate? I don't think so.
No.
You've seen Lehigh have their issues. You've seen Loyola. So it's going to be interesting because the top 4 teams that were seeded going into the tournament are the 4 seeds that moved on. Loyola. So it's going to be.
So it's been chalk so far.
Yeah, Lehigh gets to face Colgate Sunday. Mm-hmm. That's going to be a tough matchup, I think, for the Mountain Hawks. In those 2 matchups this year, Colgate. Oh, well, they did beat Colgate back in January, but that's before Colgate turned it on.
Right. And, you and I are looking forward to the Mountain West Conference tournament because there's so many teams there. Man, on any given night, any one of those teams could be. That's a deep, deep conference.
Yeah, you look at, like you said, you've got 5 teams right now that have 10 wins in the conference. At least. Boise State's got 15, Colorado State has 13, San Diego State and Wyoming have 12, UNLV has 10, and Fresno State, they're 8-8 in the conference, but, they're 18 and 11. Right. And then you've got Utah State, they're only 7 and 10 in the conference, but they've got 16 wins, and they've got some good guys. Justin Bean, of course, has carried the tradition that Sam Merrill and Nunez Cueta had for the Aggies before Craig Smith then left to go to Utah. I wonder if he's regretting that move.
Yeah.
But there's a ton of good teams in that conference, and you've got, like I said, we just talked about 7 teams that have a chance, and it would have a decent chance of winning the tournament when we get there, because you write off Nevada, New Mexico, Air Force, and San Jose State. But 7 out of 11 have a legitimate shot at saying we can win the tournament and go to March Madness.
Right, absolutely. Well, let's go back to the ice. In this case, we got Minnesota and Buffalo.
Yeah, the Wild, they played last night against Philadelphia. For a long time I was worried because they were down 4-3 in the third period. They scored twice in a 22-second span because Philadelphia did Philadelphia things, also known as not keeping the puck out of their own net, and turned it into a 5-4 Minnesota victory. Now they get to go to Buffalo to face the Sabres. The Sabres did beat Minnesota 3-2 in a shootout back in December in Minnesota. I expect the Wild to avenge that loss here. Minnesota 16-12-2 on the road. Buffalo not very good at home, 8-14-4. Capo Kakinen 12-5-2 with a 267 goals against and a 917 save percentage. Expected to start against Craig Anderson. Now, Craig Anderson is 803 years old. I think he was around when Methuselah was playing. He's 7-7 with a 287 goals against and a 909 save percentage. In reality, Anderson's 40. He'll be 41 in May, so his age will match his jersey number later in the season. Minnesota's third in the league in goals for, 21st in goals against. Buffalo does not score. They're 24th in the league. And they don't stop anyone from scoring either. They're 27th in goals against at 3.55. Minnesota 8-2 in the third game of a 3-game and 4-night situation. In their last 10 that kind of outing. They're 11-4 in their last 15 against the East. They're 49-18 in their last 67 as a favorite. They are 28-80. The Sabres are 28-81 in their last 109 as an underdog. They're 12-42 playing on one-day arrest, and they don't like playing the Western Conference. They're 0-5 in their last 5 in those situations. Minnesota's won 6 of the last 7 meetings at the KeyBank Center / First Niagara Center / Marine Midland Arena / insert name here.
Bob's big boy. Yeah.
Yeah. Your name here / available for
Chico's bail bonds, right?
I see everybody's talking about the Bradley Loyola Chicago game today that was going off in about an hour and change. The always exciting 3:30 tip-off in Arch Madness.
Right.
I guess everybody's wondering why everybody's jumping up on Bradley, and that's because the Braves did beat the Ramblers earlier this season, 68-61 at home back in early February. They hung tough in the first meeting in Chicago, losing 78-71 in overtime in early January. I guess the big thing with the Ramblers is people are trying to figure out what they're going to get out of them, because Loyola Chicago, they kind of stumbled down the stretch. They lost that game to Bradley. They lost at home to Drake. Then they came back and beat up a couple of doormats. They beat up Illinois State, who had fired their coach. They beat Evansville, who people wonder how they still have a basketball team.
Mm-hmm.
But they lost with the top seed in the conference on the line. They lost to Northern Iowa in overtime last Saturday. And because of that loss, they went from having potentially the number 1 seed in the tournament to dropping all the way to the 4 seed because they lost tiebreakers to Missouri State and Drake.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to take anything away from what Drew Valentine's done. He's done a great job stepping in and taking over what Porter Mosier did with the program.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to think, can Bradley keep it up? And I'm not sold on the Braves. Let's face it. I know they've got a lot of older guys. Reek Mast has done a decent job as a sophomore. Terry Roberts, but their other starters don't really do anything on the offensive end of the floor. I mean, Levi Leons, Connor Hickman, and Vili Tavanainen, trying to figure that one out. Say that 3 times fast. They don't necessarily get a whole lot done on the offensive end of the floor. I mean, Bradley hasn't been the same after Jashawn Henry's only played 11 games. I think Loyola Chicago should win this game.
Mm-hmm.
I see the line's down to 5.5. It was 6.5. But I still think Loyola Chicago, they're the better team. Sister Jean, of course, is probably at the Enterprise Center tonight to watch the Ramblers. And I just think, Lucas Williamson and those guys are going to get it done. I know missing Marquise Kennedy has been a blow for them because he was so valuable in the Final Four running years ago.
Yeah. Roland has a quick question about Marymount.
Oh, Loyola Marymount, yep. We were going to get to them, but first 2 meetings between these teams, first one was an 83-82 overtime win at Loyola Marymount for BYU. They just met a couple weeks ago at BYU in Provo. It ended up 79-59. Now, obviously, you're going to come up somewhere in between those two. You're not going to see, I don't think you're going to see 165 points. I think it's probably going to end up somewhere around 145, right around there. If you look at the last few games for BYU, like I said, they had the first meeting with Loyola Marymount was 165, then they had 176 with Pepperdine. Their last 3 have fallen short of the number. 133 with St. Mary's, 138 with Loyola again, 134 with Pepperdine. And you look at Loyola Marymount, their last stretch here, 164 in a loss to Santa Clara, 137 with a loss to Pacific, 138 with the BYU game. Then their last two games against Pacific, 167 and 152. Both wins for Loyola Marymount. Otherwise, they wouldn't be here. The big issue with the Lions, they don't play very good defense. So if BYU plays their usual style and knocks down shots, it should go over. I think that it'll end up over the number, but not by much.
Well, here comes our buddy. Detroit Lenny's with us. Detroit Lenny is from Picks and Parlays. He's a great guy. Many of you saw him on our Super Bowl special, and he's making his debut on our show. Detroit Lenny. Lenny, it's great to have you, buddy.
Thanks for having me. I thought I'd bring the Shamrocks for good luck on my first time for your show. I just thought I'd bring all the luck I could get to try and compete with you legends over here. I'm happy to be on.
Isn't the song by Kiss, You Gotta Lose Your Mind in Detroit, Lenny City?
Yes, that's it. I've lost my mind a few times. That's why I left that place. I'm currently in Vegas, so who moves to Las Vegas to get their life together? This guy.
There you go.
So,
Lenny, before we start, let me ask you a question. The Red Wings, obviously, tonight, down the road in the Amalie Arena to take on Tampa Bay. What do you think of their chances with Nedeljkovic in net against Brian Elliott?
So I'm on the Wings team total over 2.5, and I'm on the over. I have a thing where I will not bet the Wings straight up just to win money line. I mean, unless they're playing like the Coyotes or the Sabres or Ottawa or something like that. But if I bet on them, they'll lose. So it's just, I'm very superstitious. I mean, I think a lot of us are in the world that we live in. So I won't just bet them straight up like that. I don't mind them like on the puck line plus a goal and a half. I think it's minus 110 straight up. So I don't mind that. I like the over 6.5. 2 out of 3 of these games this year already, I think, went over. So I don't mind the over. They play them. This game could go 3-3 in overtime and go over, and I don't see that. Or Nedeljkovic could just drop 5 in the first period. Either way, it's going to go over anyways, and then the Wings will backdoor over 3 and cover that for me. So I'm okay with that. I'm just going to bet some totals on this game. That's kind of, it's like I'm very hopeful for my Wings. They're the best thing I got going on in Detroit right now. They're young, they're good, they're hungry. They got the right leadership with Steve Yzerman and everybody in the front office. They're bringing in the old guys that have won cups. They've been there before. They know how to win. So in Steve Yzerman, we trust.
You like Jeff Blashill as the coach?
No. I didn't like him when they hired him. Didn't like him now. Don't like him tomorrow. Won't like him tomorrow. He was great in the AHL when he was with the Grand Rapids Griffins, I think it is. But I'm not a big fan of him. I just think they need, he's trying, and he's good with the young players. I will say that. He's good at developing players, but I just think you need that, when we won the Cup back, Scotty Bowman, you need that presence. You need that man that's just going to, when he walks into the room, he demands respect. He's the leader, and there's no doubt about it.
So if you could get anyone as a coach right now to coach the Detroit Red Wings, who do you get?
Oh, Scotty Bowman 20 years ago in his prime. I mean,
would you take the corpse of Scotty Bowman over Jeff Blashill?
Maybe. I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not good with names, and I'm trying to think of
Stevie Yzerman, when Stevie was running Tampa Bay, I mean, he brought in some good coaches down there. I think that, as you say, in Steve, you trust. I mean, my problem is I go all the way back to actually doing games when Steve played. Back at the Joe Louis Arena.
We trusted him then, too.
Yeah, trusting him then. And that was with the Red Army on his side. But, Yzerman is good at finding the right person. Now, in the off season, you're likely to see there will be a change. And if it is, then Steve will go down and he'll figure out, okay, what is it that we need to do? You know, obviously you need somebody who's good with young players, and there are a few, coaches out there that are good with young players. And so entrusting in Steve is not a bad idea, because he's proven in the past that it kind of reminds me of a John Lynch in San Francisco, a former player who understands how to build a team. And, that's something that John learned from Tony Dungy, and it's certainly something that Stevie learned from Scotty Bowman.
Yeah, and I do agree with that. I would like to see, I don't even know if this might be just a homer pick for me, but I'd like to see a Gerard Gallant if he came back, former Red Wing player. He's got NHL coaching experience. I mean, he coached with the Knights out here in Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
He's got some head coaching experience under him. I don't know if I want. I don't know. I don't know if that would. I'd run the numbers. I don't know his numbers overall, coaching and everything like that. But I wouldn't be. I could see Steve Yzerman bringing in somebody from the past, though, to a former player. Maybe doesn't have any coaching experience, and I don't know. So, but if Steve Yzerman told me that his wife needed to be the head coach of the Red Wings, I would say, go Steve! So I would believe in her. So that's where I'm at.
So there you go. Hey, we were just getting ready to go to the NBA. We just finished the NHL. Okay. And, both of us are BetMGM fans, as are you, I know. And they have a really cool promotion going on for the NBA. And basically, the deal is, if you're a first-time user of the BetMGM app, you deposit and bet $10 on any NBA game, you get $200 if either team hits a three-pointer. And, just saying, I'm not an expert, but, three-pointers in the NBA, that's a pretty decent chance somebody's going to hit one.
Might be able to cash that one.
Yeah, that one you might be able to make it work. So all the information on that and the other NBA, the other BetMGM promotion we talked about earlier is in our show box below. Be sure to go down there and check it out. Remember that you have to be 21 years of age to play in all ways, as the three of us here know. Always bet responsibly. Okay? All right, gang. All right, let's go to we're going to take you to the board here, buddy. And you can play with us here. Here we go. You ready?
Let's do this. Yes.
We are going to.
There you go, Lenny. It's the Bucks and the Bulls coming in at the United Center tonight. Of course, Chicago lost last night 130 to 124 to Atlanta by melting down in the fourth quarter, much to the chagrin of my son, who got very irritated when Chicago let that fourth quarter lead slip away. The Bucks 38-25, the Bulls 39-23. They're the top two teams in the Central Division, especially with the Cavaliers fading of late. More on that later. The Bucks fifth in scoring offense at 113.7. They're 14th in field goal percentage at 46.1. They shoot well from the outside. The Bulls middle of the road defensively, 18th in scoring defense, 23rd in field goal percentage, and they're horrible defending the arc, 27th in 3-point field goal percentage defense. Meanwhile, the Bulls 8th offensively, 112.5 points a game. They lead the league in field goal percentage 48.4, and they lead the league in 3-point shooting, facing a middle-of-the-road Bucks defense. But they're 8th in field goal percentage defense and 13th in 3-point defense. I like the Bucks here mainly because Chicago played the second game of back-to-back. They have injury issues. The Bulls 7-18 in their last 25 at home against teams with a winning road record. 1-6 in their last 7 against teams with a winning percentage above 600. And the Bucks have gone 9-1 against the spread in the last 10 meetings in the Windy City. Lenny, what do you take about this game?
I couldn't agree more with what you just said. I'll tell you what, I've been a fan, just let me fanboy out for a second, of this show, because I'm a parlay kind of guy. And I like the way you guys break everything down. And this, for me, we preach this on Picks and Parlay, it's all about knowledge. The more information we have, the more educated bet we can make. And this is awesome, the breakdown and how you guys do all that. I would totally go with the Bucks here. I don't do a whole. I limit myself on the NBA because I can get a little goofy on the NBA and get a little carried away. So I know my lane, and I kind of try and focus most of my energy in my lane. But the NBA here, I have 3 plays in the NBA today, and the Bucks are one of them. Against the spread, I did do the over as well on a 2-teamer. I took the over 210. I could totally see this game I could see the Bucks getting 120 out of this. So if
really, you got the over at 210 on that game? Because now it's at like 240.
No, sorry, not 210, 240. I was reading your 210 minus 210 at the very top.
I just try to put up the lines because some people don't want to bet the points, so that's why I try to keep the lines up there too.
Fair. I took my 2-team parlay is the Bucks money line and the over, and then I have the Bucks straight against the spread at minus. I got them at -5 though.
So you're looking at a track meet situation.
I'm trying.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, the Bucks have gone over 9 of their last 10 games coming into this one, including that wild game the other night against the Heat, where they closed the game out a 21-6 run or something like that to win by 1. And the one thing with the Bulls, they like to score points. You look at some of the numbers they put up lately: 134 against Minnesota, 121 against Charlotte, 124 in that loss to Phoenix before the All-Star break, 120 against the Spurs, 125 against the Kings, 124 in that loss yesterday. So I think you're right on there with the fact that we could have a track meet here. A lot of offensive weapons. DeMar DeRozan has been terrific for the Bulls. I don't think anybody expected that after seeing what we've seen from him in Toronto and San Antonio before this.
And not to mention, you mentioned the back-to-back for Chicago. I think that's going to play into this. I think they're going to try and come out hot and try and turn it into a track meet because they know that's how they're going to win this game. But Milwaukee, at the end of the day, is just going to pull away.
Milwaukee, if this is a track meet at the end after the Chicago playing yesterday, it's going to look like Usain Bolt in the last few minutes of the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
The weird thing about the Bulls, they were ahead in the fourth quarter, and then they just fell apart. And just looking at their splits here, in the same game of back-to-backs, Chicago is outscoring their opponents by 0.6 points a game. So that's something, I guess. But they haven't. They've got just 1-3 coming out of the All-Star break. So some issues in Chicago.
They need to get themselves together pretty quick.
And I think they're going to kind of get up for this, even though it is on a back-to-back, and they're going to, the way they turn it into a track meet is, if I'm the coach, if I'm the head coach there in that locker room, I'm telling them this is a playoff atmosphere. This is a playoff game. We could possibly be, meeting these guys in the Eastern Conference Finals. This is the way. We set the precedent. We set the tone right now. And the way they do that is to get out early and often, and that turns it into a track meet, but at the end of the day, Milwaukee's going to keep going, and Chicago is going to die in the last 10 minutes of that game.
So you're going old school. You're going all the way back to Phil. You're going Phil on them. You're going.
Absolutely. I'm 48 years old. I come from that era of Chicago and those guys, and the Bulls hating Michael Jordan because he just dominated us, but we take precedent in the Bad Boys. The Bad Boys take some honor in feeling like we made Michael Jordan who he is. We made him tougher.
That's a fact.
You guys and Craig Elo made Jordan.
Well, that too.
I will say that. That was Chuck Daly. Chuck Daly was
the man.
Chuck Daly wanted, he wanted. When 23 walked into the Pontiac Silverdome to play those games, and I was fortunate enough to be there doing those games. If Michael Jordan didn't have Rick Mahorn's elbow, on his head right here, and Lambeer's had an elbow print on the top of his head, it was not a Chuck Daly game. Right. Chuck Daly, there were people being carted out in practice with Chuck.
No blood, no foul.
No blood, no foul, and and as Chuck said, I got 16 fouls to give up. I got no problem with that.
And let me just say this about Chuck Daly: best dressed man in the NBA.
Oh, without a doubt.
Dapperest guy by far, and that man. I worked back in another life at the Men's Warehouse and sold suits. And that was like my first job kind of thing. I was like 19, 20 years old. And Chuck Daly came in Auburn Hills into the Men's Warehouse. And I was like, oh my God, you're Chuck Daly. And he's like, yeah, can I take a look at some shoes? And I'm like, you're Chuck Daly. And he's like, can I still look at shoes? And I'm like, he bought all kinds of stuff. He bought like $2,000 worth of stuff from us. And it was
Chuck
awesome.
Daly
Signed autograph, took pictures. It was great.
Did you get the commission though?
Yeah, me and one of my buddies, we just kind of tag team that whole thing. Whatever you need, Mr. Daly, whatever you need.
I'll tell you what, he even looked good in practice. So
yeah,
that's just the way he was. He's a stylish man. He reminded me of another guy who I liked in those days was Notre Dame Digger Phelps. Digger always with the boutonniere. You know, that was him. All right, so from Milwaukee and Chicago.
Well, look, guys, Allie's here. She said hi.
Hey, Allie. Oops.
Mama Allie's coming to check on me. Make sure I'm not acting.
I hit the wrong button, guys. There it is, 76ers and Cavaliers.
Yeah,
now, this is my second half team, is the Sixers. And Chris is...
I'm still
Chris is trying to talk me off the edge here.
I'm not still not 100% sold on the 76ers just because of the fact that, Harden doesn't know if he wants to stick with the team, so this is basically a win now or bust situation. It's paid off for the first few games. I'll give them that. And they're facing a Cleveland team that is reeling right now. 5 losses in their last 6. They're going on the road here. And the strange thing for me, Lenny, is that Philadelphia has not been as good at home as they've been in previous years. But, can you trust Cleveland right now? Seeing what we've seen?
I don't trust them. Beginning of the year, I thought they were. I liked them. They were doing good. They've just, I don't know what it is, but they've just kind of slowly but surely fallen apart a little bit. And the Sixers have put games together. I don't believe in James Harden. I don't think he's a long-term, or I don't want to say long-term answer because we all know he's not. But they are all in, and I'm not buying it. But I think they could make a little run in the playoffs, sure. But I don't think they're walking away with any kind of trophies this year, except for a participation trophy.
All right, participation trophy.
Yeah, and then, but that's about it. But I do like them in this game. They have been crushing it lately, and I'm in the old school kind of thought where I'm not trying to catch a dropping knife. And, the 76ers are rolling, and I'm just going to keep going with them until they prove me wrong. So, in this particular instance, one of my NBA plays, single, just straight up bets, is the 76ers. I got them at 7, straight 7. So that's where I'm at on this. I wouldn't be opposed to taking the Sixers, and so I'd like throwing them on a 3 or 4-team parlay. I do a lot of 3-team parlays, and then I round robin on 2s. So I do a bunch of those. That's my kind of thing. I don't know.
Oh,
if it works for you, that's what matters, right?
Yeah, it works, because most times I'm going to go 2 out of 3. So,
Lenny,
2 out of 3 ain't bad. Meatloaf said it.
Right. Lenny, you came to the right place. Because what comes up next, my friend, is what we like to call the 2 for the money. And there it is.
I like it.
We give you 4 teams, 4 games.
We always tell you can mix them up.
Mix them up, do whatever you want to. There's our games for tonight.
Yeah, I like Philadelphia, like Lenny just said. Cleveland is slumping, and he says, you're not going to try to catch a falling knife. We always say we're going to ride a team until the wheels fall off. Right now, that's the 76ers. Cleveland, they have issues in the backcourt. They're not going to have Rondo, Karis LeVert still out. Darius Garland, he played the other night, but the problem was the rest of his team didn't show up. I got burned on that one because I thought him coming back would help Cleveland. Instead, they got schmaltzed by Charlotte, a team that has been absolutely dreadful of late. I like Missouri State in the Missouri Valley Conference. Hey, why not? Interesting stat here in that one, Jim. Isaiah Mobley, only the 3rd player in the last 30 years in Division I to go 50% from the floor, 40% from 3, and 90% from the line. So, Steve Nash, Dirk Nowitzki numbers there. Valparaiso is an overmatched team. I don't think you can count on the Beacons to do a whole lot in this one. They're not a great team offensively. They had struggled to get by Evansville, and everybody knows how bad they are.
I don't think Bryce has any more eligibility to get back to Valpo and hit that shot again. So, yeah.
That's true. And then we talked about it earlier, the Rangers over the Devils. I'd like to know what you thought about that one, Lenny. I know you're a big hockey guy, of course.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all. I probably have a nice little three. I'm on the Hurricanes tonight. I like them over Pittsburgh. I like like I said, the Wings team total. I like the Wild in regulation. That was a little bit better line for me.
Probably, yeah.
But the in regulations on my book, I can't really parlay a whole lot of that. So just some money line stuff, though. I like the Wild. I like the Hurricanes. I do like the Rangers tonight. I also like the VGK over against Anaheim. It's at 5.5. VGK just has to, it's all that's on local TV out here in Vegas. VGK, and it gets a little annoying, but they have to get their act together sooner than later if they're going to want to compete for a cup in the Western Conference, and the Anaheim Ducks are the perfect team to do that against.
Now, if you were to handicap who you think would win the Vezina right now, if I give you three names, tell me how you'd rank them. We've got Shesterkin of the Rangers, of course. You've got Vasilevsky in Tampa Bay, and we'll let you insert the third guy because I'm not putting Darcy Kemper from Colorado on a list after they lost to Arizona.
Yeah, that probably would have been my third one yesterday, but after that debacle last night. And you know what? I talked about this. I have a little hockey group chat on Twitter that we talk, and everybody was on there, and we were all talking about how Colorado plays down to their competition. And I'm like, well, that's great, no, but Arizona is like the bottom of the barrel competition, man. Even on an accident, they should win that game. And they got embarrassed, and just straight up embarrassed. But I like Tampa's goalie. I picked him at the beginning of the year. I like him he's a difference maker in that team. They play good defense. They play okay defense, but he's the guy that he can stand on his head. He can win you a game. He reminds me a lot of a Dominic Hasek back in the day. He can take over a game. He can totally just shut it down. And he's a playoff goalie, and that's the guy that you want on your team at the end of the day.
I mean, he's got back-to-back Stanley Cups, Vasilevsky.
Right.
And Vasilevsky, surprisingly, is a big guy. If you look,
yeah, he's not small.
If you look at Vasilevsky when he stands up, and he's towering above the net, and you're saying,
right,
how does a guy this big get down as well as he does? And, because usually big goalkeepers are not that good low, but Vasilevsky's good low as well.
He gets down quick, and he's very, it sounds like cliche, but he's very limber. And all goalies normally are, but for a man that's over 6 foot tall to drop down like that, bounce, boom, bang, pow, up, down, all around it, that guy is just
he's a gymnast
everywhere. Yeah, he really is. He really is. And if you think about it, you see these gymnasts, when you watch the Olympics, they're all like 4 foot nothing. Right. And he's a giant compared to them, and he's doing... I'm waiting for him to do a backflip and land on his skates. I mean, I'm going to end up on SportsCenter, and I still wouldn't be surprised.
Super Sly asked, what do you think of Thatcher Demko from Vancouver?
So he's another one. He's the only reason that Vancouver is where they are right now. With a mediocre goalie, he's not. They're not as good as they are. They need help. I think they are buyers at the trade deadline.
We talked about that the other day.
Yeah, I watched you guys. I watched that, and you guys were talking a little bit about. I popped in on that, and we were talking. I heard you guys talk about Chicago and the Blackhawks being sellers and the fire sale going on over there. Marc-Andre Fleury will not be in a Blackhawks uniform come the end of the year. I don't think so at all. Where does he go? That was something we talked about a little bit on some of our shows, Picks and Parlays, and everybody thinks he's coming back to Vegas. He is not coming back to Vegas, folks.
No, I mean, I think that they're pretty happy with Leonard, and Brisson has played pretty well in a backup role.
They really are.
There's other teams that definitely could use gold. I mean, I'm not going to lie. My Maple Leafs could use better goaltending right now. You know, Peter Mrazek, I was disappointed when they signed him to begin with. We'll send him back to you. You guys can have him.
No, he's a bum. No, thank you. We take Thomas Greiss all day over him, and Thomas Greiss is not. I will go as far as to say Thomas Greiss is not an NHL goalie. Some people will. Maybe I'm a little too harsh on him, and I probably am. I mean, the two hardest jobs in Detroit Rock City are the backup goalie, or the two favorite players that are loved the most is the backup goalie and the backup quarterback for the Lions. Those two guys are rock stars in Detroit because everybody thinks they're the answer. The other guy sucks, kind of thing, and that's kind of where we're at.
Okay. We're going for our 4-team parlay, and we got Suns, BYU. Go ahead, Chris.
Someone explain to me why the Suns are only favored by 6.5 points at home over the Knicks. I know you don't have Devin Booker, you don't have Chris Paul, but what do the Knicks have? I mean, we just watched them blow double-digit lead against the 76ers the other night. Last month they blew what it was almost a 30-point lead when they lost to the Nets.
They got 4 guys named Mo.
The only guy that I know that likes the Knicks is Tony from the LA show, but he said the only people that watch the Knicks are him and 5 guys in Schenectady, but that's because they lost the remote to their TV. But, I don't have any faith in the Knicks. I mean, let's face it. Tom Thibodeau, he's a great defensive coach. I'm not going to take that away from him. Did a great job in Chicago. He did an okay job in Minnesota with the players he had. The personnel that he has in New York does not mesh with the style that he wants to play. Now you have to go to Phoenix. It's bad enough you have to go to Phoenix, right? It's bad enough to go to Phoenix when Phoenix is playing bad basketball. Phoenix is the best team in the league. They have 50 wins. They just blew out Portland without Paul or Booker. And you're the Knicks. I don't feel good if you're New York here. Lenny, do you have a different take or?
If it was in New York, it'd be a different ball game. Here, I'm a little scared of the 6.5. I stayed away from the game because it looked too easy for me. I don't want to use the word trap, but it looked a trappy, and that 6.5, I thought, obviously if you have Booker and everybody's healthy, all things equal.
That's probably 50?
Yeah, I was just saying it's double digits for sure. So they're going to take some of the away, but at the end of the day, I think the Suns should just roll. They should really just roll over the Knicks, but I don't want to. I stayed away from it, and sometimes the best bet is no bet. So I just kind of stay away.
Jim says that all the time.
Yeah. I stayed away from that game.
This one will be on when you're still up. Most of us on the East Coast will be sleeping when BYU and Loyola Marymount meet. But we've been in this. This is a conference we like, Lenny. We like the WCC and the Mountain West.
Loyola Marymount, sure, they beat Pacific yesterday. They beat Pacific Saturday, too. But the problem for Loyola Marymount here is they're not playing Pacific. BYU, I know they've had their ups and downs for Mark Pope. But let's face it, the Cougars, they beat Loyola Marymount last week by 20 points in Provo. They play good defense. They have decent offense. If Alex Barcelo decides that he actually wants to play basketball, and Tijon Lucas, Fasuni Traore had a big game against Pepperdine. I just like the fact that BYU is here. They need this win because if they win, they're going to face San Francisco in the quarters tomorrow. They basically need this win if they want to have any shot at it in a large bid, I think. And I think with that in their heads, they're going to go out there and just roll over a Loyola Marymount team that's not that good.
But they also need style points. You can't
That's
just
true.
win.
That's true. We talked about the Bucks, and Lenny agreed as well. We talked about Vegas, and Lenny, you think Vegas is going to have to beat Anaheim if they're going to have a shot at making any kind of run in the West, which I agree with. I mean, they're coming off a dismal performance last night against Boston, losing 5-2 at home. But the Ducks are another team I can't figure out because they play well for a couple weeks and then they go right in the tank. And that Western Conference that we've talked about before is such a crowded race. You look at the wild card situation in the West, and right now you're looking with Nashville and Vegas tied at 64 points for the two wild card spots, but Dallas has 63, Anaheim has 61, Vancouver has 60, and Winnipeg has 57. So you've got 6 teams battling for 2 spots right there that are all within 7 points of another. Lenny, if you're handicapping down the stretch here with, about 2 months to go, who are you looking at is going to be in, and who's going to be on the outside looking in from that group?
I think Vancouver kind of sneaks in as a wild card a little bit, and my counterpart Nick Earl from Earl Sports Bets, we do a game time decision show mid-afternoon or later in the East Coast. I forget. I'm on the Pacific Coast. I'm on Vegas, so I always talk everything.
We can add. Don't worry.
I forget. That's okay. Sometimes I cannot. Detroit Public School, so bear with me. But he said this at the beginning of the year too, and we both agreed. I don't know if Vegas makes the playoffs. And I think they're going to fall out of that. I don't even know if they even make a wild card run here. So if they're going, they have to do it here in beginning stages of March. Otherwise, they're not. Their schedule does nothing but get harder in the later parts of the year. So I don't, they're not going to compete. Somebody like Colorado, St. Louis, Minnesota, they're just going to dominate that Western Conference, I think. Vancouver, I think, could sneak in there. Winnipeg, right now, me and Winnipeg have a love-hate relationship. They owe me money. That's how I feel. They owe me money, so... You
want to put your PayPal account down there and make sure we'll get it to
I have already tweeted them, and they have not replied yet, so we'll see about that. But, the West is... I'm on Nashville for the second half. They're in a wild card spot right now. After the break, I like Smashville, as they call themselves now, or whatever. I like the Predators. They can score goals. They just have to stay consistent, and I think we can see them deep in the playoffs.
It's a great place to watch a hockey game. They make it fun.
Yeah.
And to Lenny's point, this is a make-or-break situation for Vegas because you look at the next few games. After Anaheim, they play home against Ottawa Sunday. They play at Philadelphia Tuesday and Buffalo Thursday.
They should go. This is the beginning of a run.
Yep, but then they run into Pittsburgh on Friday on the road.
Let me ask you this, though, Lenny. George McPhee is a bit of a wizard when it comes to making trades at the deadline. Does he pull the trigger and go after somebody? We talked about that the other day when we were trying to figure out, who makes some trade. We thought Vancouver might add somebody because Bruce Boudreau's. That's Bruce is not at all adverse to talking to management and saying, look, if we can get this guy, that guy, or some help here, we can get in. Does Vegas and George McPhee pull the trigger?
So I think he wants to.
Yeah.
Will he make I think he will. To answer your question, I think he will. Mm-hmm. Whether it will be the right move or not, it's yet to be determined.
Sure.
They're really high on Jack Eichel, and as well they should be. But they have some issues with money as well. So they are at the cap space. They don't have a whole lot of cap area. So if they do, it's going to have to be, in my opinion, kind of a blockbuster type trade where a big name for another big name, but maybe to relieve some cap space. So
sure.
I don't know if they, and I think they really do believe in Leonard out here. And they were worried after when he got hurt that it could be a season-ending injury, and then he came out publicly and said, listen, I'm fine. We're not doing surgery until after the year, so I'm in this for the long haul. But I don't know if they do make the playoffs, they don't go far. I like St. Louis and I like Nashville to come out of the West. Mm-hmm. Colorado's going to do what Colorado does, and they're going to lose in the first round because I can't stand the Avalanche.
Well,
like Lenny said, the Knights are jammed up against the cap. They've got about $5 million in cap space right now, but that's because they've got $14 million plus sitting on long-term injured reserve.
Right, they got dead money.
Tied up in Mark Stone and Alec Martinez. Martinez hasn't played since November.
They got a lot of dead money, and we were talking earlier before we got here, Lenny, that the Rangers are at $22 million under the cap, so they could take on contracts.
Yeah, they could, and I think there are ones that are going to be there's like a buyer-seller thing at the trade deadline. I think the Rangers should be buyers.
Well,
they could make a little run.
The good thing about that, when you got that $22 million under the cap, is you don't have to give up as much if you're taking the contract and paying cash. So, you give up a fifth or a sixth round draft choice and get a guy, because some of these teams are like, if you can get me out from under this contract and I can give you a player, I'm good with that.
I'll tell you another sneaky team. I know this is in the East, but the Detroit Red Wings are going to backdoor into a wild card playoff team. They're going to lose immediately. Immediate, like they won't win one playoff game.
Have a pictures taken, yes.
But they might backdoor into some playoff stuff. But because I'm not real high on Columbus.
That's going to be a tough climb, though. I mean, they're 13 points behind Washington for the second wild card spot going into today. They do have 2 games in hand on the Caps, but it'd be nice to have an original 6 team in there.
Good. I think Boston's the one that's going to fall out, though. I think they could. They're behind, but I think they can catch Boston. I think Boston's going to be one of those teams that are just going to go.
Boston's too much of an online team for me. If you get past Pasternak, Marchand, and Bergeron, there's not a whole lot there.
Fair enough.
Hey guys, here we go. This is what we like to call the Chinese menu, Lenny. And that is, pick whatever you want. We're giving you basically an hour's worth of teams to pick. But here's some more. And leading off with Toledo.
Yeah, because I hate Bowling Green. Bowling Green screwed me over the other day. Ruined a 6-team parlay that I had because they beat Ohio. I don't think they're going to beat Toledo. I think Toledo's going to learn from the fact that Bowling Green, actually played basketball for 40 minutes.
This is a backyard brawl. These guys aren't that far away from each other.
I think Bowling Green used up their quota of good minutes. They lost by 13 at home to Toledo back in January. Now they have to go to Toledo, and let's face it, Todd Kowalczyk's team just like blowing people out at home. Just looking at the numbers, they've got a whole bunch of wins by 25, 30 points at home. I don't think Bowling Green should pose much of a threat. Utah State, I know Allie likes San Jose State with the teaser at plus 16 or whatever it is.
Yes, oh God.
But I don't like San Jose State. They're 1-16 in the conference. They don't play defense. They're allergic to offense. They're bad. I mean, they lost to Air Force.
Bad.
I mean, I'm looking at their stretch. I mean, come on, everybody's been like, "Hey, they were 7-5 in January." You know what they've done since? They're 1-16. They beat New Mexico. Woo! They beat New Mexico at home. Congratulations, you beat New Mexico at home. More of those participation trophies, kids.
Yeah, where are they?
Moving on to Drake.
Yeah, Drake over Southern Illinois. This one I was a little shaky about. I'd probably lean more towards the money line because both those games with Southern Illinois were close games this season. The first one, I believe Drake won 60-59. Let me just double check here. 60-59 on the road. Then they played them at home, and they won. Where'd they go? 62-60. So 3.5 seems like it might be a stretch for Drake, but I think that they're still the better team than Southern Illinois. And I look for the Bulldogs to move on. Ohio over Northern Illinois. Might as well just fade all the geographical teams from Illinois. Northern Illinois doesn't score any points. Ohio better be mad after they lost to Bowling Green. Because Jeff Bowles is going to get a letter from me telling him that he shouldn't be a coach anymore. Lenny, I know that you're a Pistons fan. What do you think about them against Indiana tonight?
I like the Pacers. I hate to say this. I called out on game time decision yesterday. I said the Pistons are going to win. They're going to win outright. Take them plus the points. Sprinkle a little on the money line. I liked them yesterday. I hate them today. They're not
but you were right yesterday.
Yeah, I was, and hopefully I am today as well, because my third NBA play of the day is the Indiana Pacers minus the points. I know the Pacers aren't a great team, but I'm telling you right now, the Pistons are. That's another team I don't like their coach. I can't think of his name right now.
So you don't like Dwayne Casey?
Casey, yeah. I know. I'm not a fan of him. I don't think. Not yet, anyway. I don't know. I mean, they're a young team. They need a big man, and they don't. In a back-to-back, I'm not a fan of the Pistons at all.
Yeah, just for reference sake, I'm just going to say, make sure I don't misquote myself here. The Pistons in the second game of back-to-backs this season, 4 and 7. They've been outscored by almost 13 points a game in those situations, scoring 104.4, giving up 117.2. I think that the future is bright for the Pistons. They've got a lot of young guys. Getting Marvin Bagley could be a boost if he decides to stay healthy and play basketball instead of sitting on the bench and eating donuts. I know losing Trey Lyles and stuff wasn't a major loss for Detroit because it's Trey Lyles, right? But you've got Sadiq Bey there, you've got Cade Cunningham, so there's a good nucleus to build around going forward. It'd be interesting to see if Detroit can go out and get a veteran guy to put next to those guys.
So, rumor around town in Detroit, because I follow a lot of, obviously, Detroit sports stuff, is DeAndre Ayton out of Phoenix. Okay. Not this year, but we have a lot of cap space. We've got lots of money. We have a young team. You get a veteran guy that's still relatively young that has some playoff experience with DeAndre Ayton, who's a big dude. You put him in the middle with Cade Cunningham and Sadiq Bey and all that, and these Pistons might surprise some people next year. Like, maybe, probably realistically in 2 to 3 years, but next year. I would love to get like a DeAndre Ayton or somebody like that.
But this is, like you said, they won't surprise anyone this year, but it's good on-the-job training, basically, trial by fire, to get those guys battle-tested for going forward. I mean, we've seen it happen with a lot of young teams.
And they run a lot of different players out there, too. It's not like they go through rotation 8-10 team players deep, which is good for giving the kids a chance to play.
Yeah, they're piecing some stuff together and kind of makeshift some lines out there kind of thing. And with they're trying to see what gels, what works and what doesn't.
Right.
And now's the time to do that. This is basically a whole preseason for them this year. It's all preseason, and if they're going to upset some people, they're going to cover some spreads.
Not tonight.
Everything. Not tonight though.
Yeah. But it's too bad because they've covered 6 in a row.
Yeah, I know. But I like the Pacers tonight. I do like that. I just think the Pistons on a back-to-back.
Yeah.
Here's a team, Lenny, we don't like. Oklahoma City.
Yeah, we don't like the Thunder. I mean,
no.
We always talk about, when we talk about a Pistons game, the Pistons are 29th in scoring and 29th in field goal percentage and 29th in three-point shooting. And we always say the Pistons are glad that the Thunder are in the league because the Thunder are last in all those categories.
Yep.
And you look at Oklahoma City, they've got injuries. They won't have Josh Giddey again. They won't have Lou Dort. They won't have Derek Favors. They won't have Mike Muscala. Jesus, who is going to play for them? You won't see, we always like to say, I always like to throw in past names, you won't see Kevin Durant, you won't see James Harden. Westbrook won't be playing for the Thunder either. I know Oklahoma City surprised Denver the other day as a 855-point underdog. I don't think they're going to beat Minnesota tonight. Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards, that's another young team that has probably exceeded expectations this year, and it's something that Detroit can model themselves after going forward because, they've got Anthony Edwards, they've got D'Angelo Russell, they've got Towns as a veteran guy like you were talking about. And that's kind of like the blueprint that you're talking about with the Pistons going beyond this season.
And Minnesota's a very athletic team.
Minnesota loves to run.
Yep.
Yeah.
They are Usain Bolt.
At a ridiculous rate, to the point where their road games are freaking track meets where you might as well just bet the over, even if it's like 290.
Right. And those teams like the OKCs and the Pistons and even other teams out there. I won't say the Orlando Magic, but the Orlando Magic, those teams that are in the bottom of the barrels kind of thing, they know that they're building, and we know they're rebuilding, and so they're gonna, clock's right twice a day, right? So they're gonna upset some teams randomly, but they're not going to do that day in and day out. There's a reason they're ranked 29th, 30th in the league in those categories, and that's because, sure, blind squirrel can find a nut every now and then. So, they're going to cover. They're good, sure, but they're going to win outright. And I think Detroit had its moment this week. They won yesterday. Don't get carried away. Pacers roll tonight.
Roland wants to know what you think about the total in that game, Lenny, with the Pistons and the Pacers.
I kind of lean under on that because the Pistons are on a back-to-back. I think the total is at, like 230? 229?
Yeah, 229.5 right now.
Okay, so I could see Pacers win this game like 105-95, something like that. I think the Pacers get out often and early, and once they get out so big, they're just going to lay off the gas a little bit, and the Pistons are going to take tonight off.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, you look at the totals that they had for the first two games this season. I mean, the first game was 97-89. In favor of the Pistons. The second one was 122-113 in favor of the Pacers, but that was in Indiana. But the numbers that the Vegas had set for those games, 205.5 and 208. So seeing it go all the way up to 229 is quite a jump,
right?
To say the least. I agree with Lenny. I think that one's going to stay under the total.
Let's go see the Jazz and the Pelicans.
Yeah, Utah. I'm a Jazz fan. Always have been. Going back to the days when Mark Eaton was playing with Thurl Bailey and all those guys. Daryl Griffith, but Adrian Dantley was still wearing a Utah uniform.
They all had short pants then.
Yeah.
Short shorts, yeah.
They disappointed me letting that 14-point lead slip away in the fourth quarter against Houston before beating them in overtime the other night. I know New Orleans has played well of late. Everybody's like, well, C.J. McCollum's great. Well, C.J. McCollum is only going to carry you so far if nobody else steps up, and you traded away a lot of depth to get him. I think Utah will get the win over the Pelicans down in their former home, of course, of New Orleans. And then going to the ice, like Lenny said, I like Carolina over Pittsburgh as well. The Penguins played probably their best game of the season yesterday, beating Tampa Bay. It's hard to do that on back-to-back nights, especially on the road. The Hurricanes play well at home, and I look for them to prevail. I'm going to go with Winnipeg over Dallas. That game is basically a push as far as the lines go. Over Dallas in Winnipeg. Patrick, you can keep yelling all you want. It's nice to see how you can't spell, but dead ring. Lenny, you're dead ring.
I've been dead ring before, and I'll be dead ring tomorrow probably for something. So, I tell people Allie Burns hate this, but I always say hate's the new love. So, fade or follow at your own risk.
Well, exactly. It's not like anybody sitting here saying that we're the amazing Kriskin and we're going to tell you 100% that everybody's going to win. That's not how it works.
It's called gambling.
It's called gambling.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
And Patrick, I'd love for you to come back on Monday when if Indiana wins and the total stays under, for you to come back so Lenny can say you're a moron for calling him a moron.
Your written apology, Patrick.
That's right.
In the form of email, paper, letter, whatever. Cash. Yes.
Hey, we've got some exciting news. So let's break it here. Now we're going to move Monday to 2:00, and the reason we're moving Monday to 2:00 is so Lenny and Allie can be on at 1:00. Okay, they're going to be on at 1:00. We're going to be on at 2:00. We're running precariously close to knocking Scott and Scott off the air at this moment, but
they'll get over it. We got to do a NASCAR show afterwards.
Yeah, they got stuff to do. All right. They're coming on at 3, and then we've got Lenny. You've got the show at 5 coming up. So,
yes, game time decision at
right.
5:00 Eastern. It's me and the Earl twins, Nick and Tim Earl from Earl Sports Bets, and we basically break down today's every day's NBA slate and NHL slate, injury reports, goalie updates, who's in, who's not. Give you some leans, which way we're going or whatever. But the update, basically, it's kind of like an injury report show. We just kind of go through the injuries, and that's vital information later on.
Absolutely.
We go into the season.
All that's important stuff. Because what Chris and I are always saying, Chris says it all the time, this is what's going on at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Be sure to check later because anything and everything can happen.
Before tip-off.
Right.
Especially in the NBA.
Absolutely.
Especially in the NBA.
So we're going to have a lot of fun. Things will be starting noon on Monday. So check out the lunchtime group. Then, as we say, at 1 o'clock, it's going to be Allie and Lenny. We're showing up at 2.
Is it Sean?
I'm sorry?
Is Sean at noon?
Sean is at noon. Then it comes to Allie and Lenny at 1. We come in at 2. And then Scott and Scott, as they always do, follow us. And then they lead into Lenny. So, you got a whole afternoon, folks, of fun.
Yeah.
And information and good stuff. So mark it down. But you know what? This is going to be easier. Smash the like button. Okay? Hit the subscribe button.
People.
Hit that bell. And you're good to go. All right?
Yep.
You'll find us. We'll tell you where to get us. Check us on Twitter. Check us on Facebook. Check us on all the social media because that's where we are. And that's it. And, we're going to be sneaking in on Lenny's show. Lenny's going to be sneaking in on our show. We're going to all have a little fun together. Lenny, it's been great having you. We appreciate you dropping by.
Thanks for having me, guys. Seriously, it's awesome. You guys give out a ton of good content. So I've been a fan. So when Craig told me we're all kind of one big happy family, I was like, I know those guys.
We've been friends of yours. Even though I will say this to everyone. The first time I sent an email out, I called him Larry, which was embarrassing. My apologies. It happens, It just happens. I'm lucky.
That's okay. He called me Craig in an email when he sent me the show link today. So
right. So
I've been called worse.
There are days I don't remember my own name. So it happens.
We like to always say Steve and Steve are coming up after us.
Right,
so.
exactly.
That's fair.
Drive them nuts. So, speaking of which, we got to get out of here, boys and girls, because Scott and Scott, Back to the Window, they've actually started their show. You haven't missed much, I'm telling you right now. But that's the way it is. Scott and Scott are coming up at 3. Again, remember Monday, noon, Sean and his show at noon. Then comes Allie and Lenny at 1. Then we're at 2. Scott and Scott at 3. And then you go back and you get this guy again at 5. Okay? So
we'd love to have you out whenever you want to come on.
Sorry?
I said we'd love to have Lenny out whenever he has time.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Everybody's welcome. And Lenny, we hope that the 4-leaf clovers bring all of us some luck over the weekend.
Need all of it.
And if you're going to watch something over the weekend, there's a lot of good stuff. But this the end of an era at Duke. Coach K, his last game at Cameron, it's against North Carolina. I don't think I need to say anything more about that.
Ticket prices are ridiculous.
I'm not getting a ticket. I'm saying go watch it on ESPN. Cameron Indoor, a great place to watch a basketball game. Watch it on TV. 6 o'clock tip, which is kind of an odd time for the tip, but it's ESPN. They control everything, so who cares? But again, our lineup, we're going to blow it out all over the place over the weekend. You'll know it. Noon until 5. We're going to give you content for 6 hours. Okay, starting Monday. All right. Well, 4, Chris King. 4, Detroit Lenny. I'm Jim Williams saying have a wonderful weekend, everybody. We will be back at 2 o'clock, so mark it down. I know you guys can't remember anything.
Make sure you tell James and Ryan and all those guys that are wondering when they come in at 1:30 why we're not here.
Right. Tell them. Well, there'll be something to watch. It'll be Allie and and Lenny. So they'll remind them. And they're going to pop in on our show at the beginning of the show anyway, and that way they can tell us what happened with their show. We can have a little, fun talking about what we're going to get into. So it's going to be fun. It should be fun. Now, one last thing before I leave it, I've already said that we're gone 3 times, but we haven't gone yet.
You're like LA now.
Yeah, now I'm LA. Thanks, I appreciate it. Check the show box below. Why? Because all the BetMGM promotions are in there. Chris's, parlays is in there. Remember, you have to sign up for them. He just doesn't email them. You can't send him a DM. That's not going to work. Go and check it out. All of our social information is in the show box below, so it's right there, guys. Hit the more. It'll drop down. It'll be there. Okay. So this time we are leaving.
For real this time.
Yeah, this time we really mean it. It's like it's like when you're growing up and your father's like, "I'm going to turn the car around if you don't shut up and turn around." Okay, so here we go. We're leaving. Chris, Lenny, everybody have a great weekend. We shall be back with you on Monday, 2:00. Mark it down.
Thanks for coming on.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me, for real. I meant everything. I watched you guys' show